Alejandro, another day, another great interview from Herculez Gomez, giving us stuff to talk about.
A lot of disdain in that comment.
No, it's very well done. Your most recent interview with Zack Steffen, the #1 goalie for the U.S. national team, and he spoke about said national team. Here's what he had to say.
We don't have an identity right now. We're very young and inexperienced and immature in the international soccer world right now, and we're trying to find our feet, and we're trying to find leadership. We're trying to find our playing style.
Herc, you did this interview. I might suggest that's a pretty serious indictment of the national team from its #1 goalie. What'd you think when he said it?
I was not surprised of the comment itself, of what it meant, because I think we've all thought this. We've all seen it. But I was surprised at the source. And you're right. Here's the #1, the current #1 for the U.S. men's national team, a player who knows Gregg Berhalter very well. And he's speaking his truth. He's speaking what he sees, his disappointments, his frustration. And it was clear. Listen, I don't think anybody here is going to be surprised that there's a lack of leadership, surprised of how things have gone, surprised at what was this coaching search and the way it was handled and how long you went with an interim coach and to finally get things going. I don't think it's a surprise to us. It's finally a surprise to see it boiling over to the players and them admitting that they're frustrated. And he's a young player. It's not a veteran player like Michael Bradley or Josie Alter saying they're frustrated at how things are being handled or something like this. It's a very young player. And when he speaks of his experiences with club and country, he's almost like, when I was at Columbus, it felt more of a national team. And then I go to the national team and it felt like a club team. We didn't have things on the same page. We didn't have things where everything was laid out for us. We were still trying to find our feet, find our way, and that was frustrating.
Ale, what do you make of these comments, the fact that they come out publicly and they come from not just any player? For me, like if there was ever a Gregg Berhalter guy, Zack Steffen is kind of it.
Well, there's a whole lot of searching going on, and I appreciate his honesty. I will tell you that much. I appreciate the fact that he's saying we're searching for identity. We're searching for a leadership. We are searching for a playing style. Well, those are three very basic things that you have to have in place in order for a team to pretend to be successful. If indeed your intention is to grow as a group and truly improve and give yourself the best chance possible to have a successful World Cup qualifying campaign and to have a successful Gold Cup and to do all the things that you set out for yourself as a national team and as a federation, those three things you have to have in place. All the other things and all the other sort of added features to a team and talent and players and details and tactical approach and all those things you sort of you can work on and you can maneuver and circumnavigate around and find a way to get the results you want to get. But in order to have a chance, you have to have a structure, you have to have a base, and at the base of any successful team, and this is at any level, not only international with your national team, but in club and whatever level you play, you have to have an identity, you have to have leadership, and you have to have a playing style that suits the players that you have in place. And so when you, after a year and change with Berhalter in place, you're still kind of trying to figure that out, that is a little concerning. But I think this is a byproduct of the fact of something that he was very adamant about in that conversation with Herculez, is that addressing the fact that they lost a year between the walking out the door by Bruce Arena and whatever those circumstances were, and then the appointment of Gregg Berhalter. Because in wasting 13 months, and that's exactly what it was a waste of 13 months, you're now playing catch-up. And so that's why currently you're still trying to find those things that he mentioned and those very key factors in any successful team. Because you're still trying to figure out what you might have been and could have been in those 13 months. And because you're playing catch-up there, you're not present in the moment. You're still trying to make up for that and trying to figure out what you do now. And until you actually are caught up, fully caught up, then you cannot actually expect to have the structures and the plans and the things that you want to do in the future because you haven't resolved your past just yet. Now, I think it's very present in the mind of a guy like Zack Steffen when he refers to those 13 months. And I'm going to address something that Herculez just mentioned, the idea that he had a picture of what it could be and should be going to the national team, and how surprised he was that in going to the national team, he felt more relaxed. He felt like it was a sort of, you're doing your job, but there isn't anything on the line because you knew that the coaches and the staff that was in place was not going to be there. So it wasn't anybody really evaluating you. And to have that feeling for a national team player is very, very frustrating and disappointing, because I can tell you from my own experiences that, man, you live and die to go to the national team. That is the dream of any professional player. Then once you make it there, you want to feel how different that environment is and how you are playing with the best 22 players of your country, and that in that moment you're pushing each other to be your very best. And then for him to sort of take the position and say, guess what? It was far more structured in my club team than it was in the national team. That it paints a very clear picture as to what those 13 months look like and why is it that currently the national team is still playing catch-up.
I'll mention a few other things that Zack said in this interview because you kind of alluded to it, Ale. He said it was way too long, the 13 months, and he said during that time they were given no details and no directions. Aside from the 13 months, though, Gregg Berhalter's been in charge for 17 months, Herc. What do these comments say about the year plus that Gregg Berhalter has been in charge?
It's tough to read into that because the 13 months are crucial here. Gregg Berhalter's first year in charge.
But wait a sec, Herc. He says right now. He says we have no identity right now. That's 17 months.
Let me present to you first, okay? Gregg Berhalter's first year, he capped 50 players, okay? That's year 2 of this new U.S. men's national team. If you do that in those first 13 months, you're already building to that identity, to that structure, to that DNA. They didn't have a chance to do that. That's why Ali just mentioned they are playing catch-up. It's everything in reverse with this national team. You lost, you wasted those 13 months. Now he has to try things. Now he has to see, because he wants to play a possession-based game, if he has the players to play a possession-based game. And also, Gregg Berhalter, whatever you may think of the flawed process that was to get to Gregg Berhalter, if he's the right man or not, in official games, you can say whatever you want about the region and the level, he's 8-2. 5-1 in Gold Cup. He only lost to Mexico, and that loss to what is Canada. So if you think about this, he's going to be backed because the numbers are there to back him officially. But the timetable is important here. And there is no identity. There is no DNA. There is no structure because you're still with that wasted time. You're at a standstill because of those 13 months. So it's like all of a sudden those 13 months didn't exist, and we're starting anew with Gregg Berhalter. And that's the problem. That's why you don't have this identity. Do I think Gregg Berhalter can be a good coach for the U.S. men's national team? Yes. Do I think they can play a possession-based system? No. And I think he's just starting to realize that.
And let's not forget, we're talking about a national team that failed to make the last World Cup.
Exactly.
Right? So you're in the back of the bus with everybody else, with countries like mine, okay? We're back there struggling, trying to figure out and sort it out, and transitions are difficult. So coaches lose jobs, and some new coaches come in. And now you have to transition from the older guard of players into the new guard of players. Those things are never easy to do in an ideal circumstance, even more so in a national team because you don't have the time in order to work for extended periods with a consistent group of players. And so it is indeed very difficult to try to implement whatever style is it that you're trying to play because there is a shortage of time. And if you go wasting that time, as the U.S. did for what now has we now know 13 months of just kind of waiting around and see what happens, then we go back to a word that I just used, and that's playing catch-up. And so let's not lose sight of the fact that this is a national team, again, did not make the World Cup. That puts you in a different level altogether. Whether the United States wanted to admit that or not, that puts you in a different level. You are not in the dance, right? You are not in the dance. And in order to get back into the dance, there's a whole lot of things that need to change. And you have to transition and make the transition smooth as possible. And you have to identify players. And then once you identify those players, you have to test those players out on the field and see whether those guys are good enough and have the personality and the makeup in order to be a national team player. Not just a good club player, not just a good MLS player, but can you be a national team player, which is a different type of pressure. You do all those things, and now you can consider what is it that comes in the future. But you can't jump from not making the World Cup to now, hey, well, this is our new playing style,
Right.
and this is our structure, and this is our identity. No. That's not how it works. You go step by step, because you know how the United States got in trouble? By skipping steps, by not building. By skipping steps and kind of being relaxed about what their place in the region was and their place in the world was. You did not take care of the details. You did not take care of the little steps, and then it became a big failure. Now you are dealing with the consequences of that. And so I would say that at some point you have to go back to taking care of the details, the small steps, the transition, making that transition as good as you possibly can. And then hopefully you have identified the group of players that can lead you into the future. That's what I hope Gregg Berhalter is doing. And I'm trusting that he is the guy to do it. But if he's not good enough to do it, and he doesn't prove that the results out on the field are good enough to do it, then you have to find either different players or a different manager that takes you in the direction that you need to go. But that evaluation process has already started, and it needs to get to the point to where we see results out on the field with consistency. Berhalter will tell you that as well.
And just really quick, out of those 50 players, only 5 of them with World Cup experience. So he's already trying to move on to that next chapter. But with young players, and Ali will tell you, that process gets even more and more difficult.
So how long will we give him then? At 17 months, the number one goalie says they can't find a playing style, a leadership, their own feet, and they have no identity. If he's saying that at 20 months, is it still okay? 30 months? How many months, Herc, until you can finally start to put pressure on the coach?
It doesn't go with months. It goes with, however, if we get back to what is a hex and World Cup qualifying, and if there's actually any danger of not qualifying, that's when he will be on the hot seat. But it's not about we're going to give you 5 months. We're going to give you 8 months. We're going to give you 12 months, 13 months to figure this out. That's not the way it goes in CONCACAF. That's not the way it goes really in any coaching situation around the world when it comes to the club level. It's about qualifying.
Too soon to judge Berhalter yet, Ale?
I think so, but and I think it has to do very much with the market in which he's coaching. If this was a different atmosphere and a different pressure level, then I would think that there would be more people kind of pointing the finger and starting to question what the process is all about. But given where we are in the United States, I think it's important that you understand where he came from, what situation he was dealing with the moment he walked into that door, and what he's trying to do. And as long as you can still make sense of it all, then I think you give him time. Now, that time is only dependent upon the fact that you actually see steps being taken forward. I'm all for opening the doors for 50 players into the national team because you're trying to identify talent and because you're sending a message to the older guys and saying, hey, this may not be your team anymore. We are trying to figure out whether we have younger talent here that can take this team forward. But in order to be able to take that team forward, you need to see steps. You need to see improvement. You need to see identity. You need to see structure. You need to see leadership. You need to see the hallmarks of a good team. And it's time for this team to now start taking those steps and for us to see tangible evidence that indeed those steps are being taken and that the messaging of Gregg Berhalter is getting through the players and that the player identification is now not so much about identifying the players, but once you've selected the players, that those players are able to digest and process the information and put it out on the field, executing your ideas consistently to the point to where now you have an idea as to what you are as a group.
All right, guys, that'll do it for today for the full interview with Herculez Gomez and Zack Steffen. Keep it right here.
Another one
On the ESPN FC YouTube channel.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.